It's a great privilege for me to sit on the same stage as UNICEF. UNICEF is a great inspiration to me ever since I have been involved in politics, thinking about India and Pakistan. Comrade Yunus has his fortitude, his strength, his consistency over the last 50 years of organizing and activism in Britain, first with the Indian Workers Association, then Pakistani Workers Association, then establishing the Kashmiri Workers Association, being a central inspiration to multiple the multiple campaigns for Kashmir. We know in Britain that the JKLF, all of these organizations, UNICEF, and Birmingham itself has been a really important part of that. And so it's a real honor for me to come and talk a little bit, really, about this book, Bharat in India, which he's asked me to do. But in many ways, he's already explained what he wanted to say, and I don't want to repeat what he said. But the two or three things that I think are really important in this book for today. The first thing is that when he separates Bharat and India, this is very, very important. Because in many ways, when we think of all the current conflicts, we have to think about what is being said here. And what UNICEF is doing is he's saying that Bharat is the regime that is for Brahmins, for Brahminical Hinduism. This is not the India of independence. This is not the India of Azadi. So if we want Azadi, we still need to struggle for that Azadi. And that struggle for Azadi is the Kashmiris are struggling for. In India, it's also a struggle that the Nagas are struggling for. It's also in many other nations. In Andhra Pradesh, the Naxalites are struggling for. Some part of the Sikhs are struggling for Azadi. So this struggle that the Kashmiris are undergoing, and this also comes from UNICEF's book, that independence is never going to happen unless we get all of the nations become independent. We cannot just have Kashmir become independent. And Advocate Saab talked about, said that Israel ne khatam ho jana hai, jide naam manzoor hai, but usi din Bharat te Pakistan bhi khatam hoega. ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਜੀਣਾ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਸੁਪਨੇ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਸੁਪਨੇ ਨਾ ਲਓ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਖਤਮ ਹੋਣਾ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਮਿਲਣੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਕਿ ਸਿਰਫ ਉਹ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਖਤਮ ਹੋਣਾ। ਵੈਸੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਤੇ ਖਤਮ ਹੋਵੇ, ਉਹ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਖਤਮ ਹੋਵੇ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਦਿਨ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਆਏਗੀ ਤੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਆਜ਼ਾਦੀ ਆਉਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜਸਟ ਗੌਰ ਨਾਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ। UNICEF, again in his book, he talks a lot about the way that India has always been seen as multiple nations. There have been many nations, even during the time of the Mughal Raj, which unified a lot of the country. It was never unified. Aurangzeb spent 90 years on a horse, just fighting one group, fighting another group. All of these places, including the British state, the British colonial state, which is the most centralized, it's the most unified. Even under the British colonial state, there is constant war. War never stops in these countries. When you have colonialism, there is always war. And for us, we've got to think that, yes, it was very important that the British left what was all of the parts of the world that they left. But it was a very small period for those countries, and not for Kashmiris or Palestinians, that freedom was won. And now, in today, when we think about freedom, we have to think about freedom against those same forces of colonialism. The people who are oppressing in Palestine and Lebanon, they are the masters who are oppressing in Kashmir and in Balochistan and in the rest of India, in the rest of South Asia, in the rest of the world. It is the same coalition of the West. It's the same US-led imperialist forces, with Britain still being the tout. You know, now it used to have the other countries were touts, now Britain has become the tout of these forces. And what does UNISA's work teach us? It teaches that the freedom for one can only come when we have freedom for all. There is no freedom for Kashmir without freedom for all of the other nationalities within India, but also the marginal peoples, the Dalit peoples, the peoples within that country who are struggling. There are many peoples who are marginalized in those countries who have no freedom at all, much worse freedom. And we do have to look at our own elites. Because Kamal Saab is here, who I spent a lot of time with, when he was talking, it reminded me, and when UNISAB presents his argument, we have to remember, and I'm quoting here, I'm talking about a great freedom theorist, thinker, fighter, Ghassan Kanafani. Ghassan Kanafani writes about the struggle in Palestine between 1936 and 1938. Now we're talking about history. Who are the four forces he blames in that struggle? He said there are four levels of people who destroyed our struggle in the similar way that destroyed the Kisan Mazdoor Conference and that first war. Similar to this, similar people who destroyed the struggle. First, he says the Palestinian elite. He says we have to look at ourselves, become stronger. Then he says the Arab elite, the wider elite. Then he says the settlers, the colonialists, the Zionists, and then he says they're the ultimate masters of all of these groups, the imperialist forces. Those forces are everywhere. There is the resistance in Lebanon did not get damaged in this way because without insiders, without those inside forces working against them. So we must always be vigilant. We must always listen to our elders. We must always listen to and be vigilant about what our principles are and what we stand for. And if we've learned anything from the genocide in Palestine and the impunity of Israel, US, UK, because they're all one thing. They're all one thing, is that what we need to do is to come together. We have to form a united front against imperialism, a united front to bring these things together. And this is why it's great that Kamal is here. I'm really glad that I am here, that we are here together, because this is the only way in the UK, because in the UK this is where the money is going, this is where the bombs are being sent, the technology is going. And so it's urgent for us, if the struggle for liberation to succeed, that we come together. This is an argument that UNISAB's life has been. UNISAB's whole life has been about bringing people together, bringing struggles together. And today we have a chance. There is a lot of young people who are struggling. There are a lot of people at university campuses. There's a lot of young people who have been struggling because of what is happening in Palestine. And it's completely right that we also need to tell them, well, look what's happening in other parts of the world. And those parts of the world are connected. They're connected to each other. And this connection, it may be through your faith. I'm not saying that Kashmir and Palestine are not linked through faith. Of course they're linked through faith. But just as in Palestine there are Christians, just as in Kashmir there are Sikhs and there are Hindus. So everybody has to unite. There is no solution to these struggles just through thinking of them in those as religious struggles or as religious terms, even though, of course, everyone's pain will be felt through whatever way we feel our pain. And so, for me, reading Bharat, because Yunusab already had summarized his book, for me, the main message I get from Yunus's whole work in his life is that we have to come together. And when we come together and we recognize the force, we recognize what imperialism is, but that doesn't mean that we are always just talking about this abstract thing. We have to recognize the various levels through which that same force interacts with our everyday lives, the people that we work with, and the people that we struggle with. And so that is the only message, that's the big message I get from Eunice's work, that we come together.